starting with my last note here. Whatever is implemented, this is just a nuanced thing. Obviously, we're far from this, and that's something. This is an idea that could be just considered in the process. It's not a front end, more like a back end. The mechitza, the way it is, because it is straight up and doesn't move, doesn't really pose this problem. This is just a concern of mine. I remember as a child moving around. I know that sometimes these mechitzas, they might have like, moving windows or something. So I'm just thinking in terms of the corners, and I don't know, it could be, it's not
things sticking out.
just things sticking out that people should be careful. They're walking down right by here or something. Someone could tear something or injure themselves. Another thing that I've always thought of is what it would be great, and I don't know about the arrangement and so forth, but there are a lot of synagogues that I find myself juggling, because usually, like on the Sabbath, we have our prayer book, and then we have the other book that has the text of the Torah when we read from the center here that we follow in. So I sometimes find myself juggling a little bit. I mean, usually it's one thing and not the other. But it would be great if there were and the room that we have here is such that it's not really conducive the way we have it for this, but it's something to consider perhaps in the future, that there are some synagogues that will have like a folding up place here where they have under here, like we have our little cubbyhole things, but they'll actually have like a little stand, and you can open it up and you can put your, and it's conducive to that sort of thing. Yeah, I noticed that. It's like, oh, we're not stealing their idea. I noticed that. We had a little project starting this week.
Oh, wow. So that's really fun. So is that hanging?
It's like a little stand, and it's hanging. So anyway, it's something along those lines. Okay. The other thing, and this is more like an everyday thing, and related to a few of the comments that we've had in most recently.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the door, the back door. It serves its purpose well. Some things I would like to see. I know that sometimes, sometimes the rabbi will be up to speak and he's waiting for people to leave. Either whoever's and they were kind of just, it can rattle a little bit. And it's a minor thing. I'm not trying to say. My point is that the openness of the people here in the synagogue, it's a plain door, and that promotes a humbleness of walking in. Another way to think of it is maybe in a way that it's just allowed it's somewhat more solid.
More solid, as you say, that it doesn't rattle.
In a way, well, in other words, it's true that this is related to the idea of people being able to get out and not being a bottleneck.
Right.
Just thoughts in terms of, and again, that's we're almost outside of it when we get to the door.
Right.
Just some thoughts.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Ruby.
I personally, I can't top Goldie because I've been here like a long time, but not as long as Goldie has. But I think this is the most beautiful place to daven, and I don't want to see a whole lot of changes. I mean, that's my personal feeling. I do have a problem back here davening when we're facing each other, and I can't always get a pole. There are women that try to get a pole back there because they're more comfortable, because they're just more comfortable. At the same time, I know I want to be able to see what's going on. So to me, all I would want to see changed is a mechitza where you can look out and you don't feel like you're observing each other. I don't know how you would do that on both sides, the men and the women. I don't know how you would do that, but this is such a beautiful place to pray. I don't want you to make major changes.
Well, I think that overall it would be difficult to make a lot of major changes based on the structure of the seat, because the structure is sort of interrelated, intertied together, and it's a very solid structure. So the changes that occur, I don't think will be structural. I could be wrong about that. But at the point they become structural, it becomes major then. And I don't think that's what we was talking to us about. And it's not really where we think, at least right now, where things are headed. In my experience with congregations generally is that, especially as a congregation ages, you know, the most valued part of the congregation, in addition to the warmth of the membership and the love that one another have, the people really revere their contributions to this space. You know, whether it's their religious contributions, their personal contributions, their financial contributions. This is a really hard space to just get into and suddenly say, you know, we need to do all sorts of significant changes. Because there's a lot of everybody's soul from this congregation in Goldie that, you know, that have been building what this space is since 1960, since 1961. And so, you know, I think our mission is to really revere what those contributions have been, while at the same time enhancing what the potential is for the future. And you know, and I think, you know, how flexible the location of the heat side is. I'm still working on the heat side. It's difficult. In terms of what flexibility there is in design, we're very interested in exploring that. And we'll, you know, based on your comments, we'll get to what those potentials might be. But I think one of the things we'd like to hear is how flexible you might be in terms of the location of the Mahitza. You know, whether there really is a sense that it needs to stay right there because that's where it's been, or whether there are other arrangements that could be acceptable that seem to make sense.
Hi, my family too has been longtime members of the synagogue.
Oh, we're real close, real close.
Anyway, what I want to ask you is, as you explore the different types of mahitzas and what they're going to be made of and how tall they're going to be and the location, I have a lot of concern about the acoustics and how, on the women's side, we will be able to hear the length of the Torah and what's going on here. It has got to impact the sound waves. And
Sure.
how do you measure that? And how, you know, how does that play in terms of what you're looking at, what materials you're going to use, the location of it?
Well, acoustics is a little bit of a hit in this process. We have modeled the space, and we can do a certain amount with that. Our intention is that once we have a conceptual thought about what the Mahitza may be, that we would fabricate at least a portion of that to get a sense of how it really relates to everybody's intentions. So this is going to be very much a step-by-step process, which we're not going to leave here and 8 months later you're going to see it in the Mahitza here. Our goal is that we'll work on some concepts. We'll come back. We'll show them. People can comment on those. And we don't think that this is an open-ended process that will go on for another 50 years. We think that that we'd like to reach a conclusion. But the sense is that we test it, so that we can test it visually and acoustically and see how it measures up to what's being expressed here tonight. Because it's a very interesting issue, because it has so many nuances. That everybody has something else that they want to be. And that's why we're here. We want to hear everything. We want to hear all the thoughts about what you think a Mahitza can be, so that we're sure that we're inclusive in what those are, so you don't feel left out of the process. And if there's someone here, if there's someone that's not here, that has some thoughts that would like to send us something in writing, they should feel free to do that. This is to get, a friend of mine who's an engineer once said, where were you when the paper was blank? Well, this is where the paper is blank. And we want to start with a blank sheet of paper, and we want to get as many ideas on that piece of paper, and then we want to produce a solution which addresses, as we reasonably can, a solution which approaches those concerns.
Yes, I have 2 or 3 thoughts. One is, as you walk into the shul, it is very dark. It's not very welcoming. And yes, many of us are aging, but we do have a lot of young members, and we want to bring in more young families. But when you walk in, it's just old and dark and very, so it needs to be brightened up, maybe some seating, and as David said, a nice table where books and the Kikos and everything, something very welcoming. My other thought is, some women have made this comment, that at a bar mitzvah or some kind of a celebration, simcha, the men dance and the women watch. And it would be so nice if we had a room on the women's side to be able to dance too. Behind the mechitza.
It's so great that you bring it up.
And my other thought is, I never really thought about the slope being bad on your backs. That could be, I don't know. But maybe some more padding. We stand a lot.
Yeah.
And I know, to have seating like they have, I don't know the name of the shul up in Sandy Springs, it's, with the place for the books, and you can stand up and you have a place for your sitters. I think that's very expensive. So I'm not sure we can do anything about that, but perhaps having more padding in the carpeting would be a simple help.
Thank you.
Well, I hate to admit it, but I've been part of the show for over 50 years. And I love everything about it. I'm astonished that people have found so many interesting things that are actually would be helpful, like the lighting and the acoustics and the bookcases, and so many things that I say, yeah, I never noticed that. That's really interesting, and maybe it would improve things. I do feel that someone mentioned the back doors.
Yeah.
And the back doors are a problem perhaps just if someone is coming in late, which sometimes happens in the shul.
Just on occasion.
Just occasionally, they come in late, and the rabbi is already speaking, and it's very uncomfortable to stay outside and not hear it, but it's also very uncomfortable to open the door. Not just the click, but just being noticed, distracting the rabbi. It's all very awkward. So if there could be an entree, a little entry hall, something, so that it would be enclosed, the sanctuary would be enclosed, but the door would be like one step back. You could come in and sort of compose yourself and maybe just stand there and listen. But I think it might ease the entry either for newcomers, people who are first-time visitors, and even if there is a greeter, the greeter could be standing outside in the little alcove. So that's my only thing that I've ever noticed that needed improvement in this wonderful shul.
Thank you very much.
I found all these comments very interesting, and one thing I'm a little bit confused about, though, as I look at the Mechitza from an architectural point of view, it looks pretty good. And so I think what you have to is develop some sort of objectives of what we're really trying to accomplish here. And I think that there's a difference between the aesthetic objectives and the religious objectives. From architects, you might say, well, this looks perfect, all right. What do these people need us for?
We made that comment before.
Right. And so, I think we have to set some ground rules for the congregation to know what the religious objectives we're trying to accomplish are, so then we can make some fair comments of how we can accomplish that. Otherwise, I don't see how we're really going to accomplish much here tonight.
Well, I think the purpose of this meeting really is to hear, because the objectives, I think, they're clearly the religious objectives that can be identified. But part of the interesting issue is the personal interaction with what that objective is. That we all interpret the objectives differently. And so what we're trying to hear is the range of the interpretations. I mean, we've heard wonderful things this evening about things we've never heard. We've talked some about the